Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we're taking a look back at Disney Plus on its 5-year anniversary. Its five-year anniversary is actually tomorrow, November 12th. It is crazy to think that Disney Plus launched 5 years ago.
It is, and it's not. Because, there's a part of me that feels very much like it's been a very long time since I had to own a Disney movie to watch it. It's super nice now that I can just go on and just watch any Disney movie I want at any time when I feel like it. Like Nightmare Before Christmas. We've watched it on Halloween for the past 2 years now. It's a movie that I'd only seen one other time. I probably wouldn't watch it every year if we didn't have access to it. I'd probably have to buy it, but I don't know. It's just, it's cool.
It is nice, and I mean, we'll get into this because there have been a lot of highs and also a lot of lows with Disney Plus. And so, I think it is interesting because it's been 5 years. It's been a long enough time. I feel like we can look back on it, and it has been a roller coaster ride in terms of Disney Plus. And I think there are some questions on whether it was worth it. And is the strategy Disney's taking with Disney Plus worth it, and kind of the ramifications I think we're seeing in other aspects of the company can be traced back to Disney Plus. And I would almost think that Disney may have been better off never starting Disney Plus, at least in the way they're doing it.
Right.
I think like what you talked about with like the movies, I think that obviously works, but we will get into all that as we kind of look back at Disney Plus here. We are kind of pre-recording this, so not a lot of news, but there is one piece I wanted to talk about.
Unless there was a lot of news. And
we'll talk about it next week.
We just missed it.
But one thing I did want to talk about, this came out a couple weeks ago. We have not had a chance to talk about it, but the new cruise ship, the Disney Adventure. So this is the cruise ship that Disney purchased out of bankruptcy. So it is vastly bigger than any other cruise ship Disney's done. It has a lot of features, a lot more space than Disney's typically used to. And so they have slowly kind of released some stuff on it. And what they talked about is this Marvel landing area. And it's actually going to have 3 attractions on it. And so this is where, again, because the cruise ship is so large, there's going to be a lot more to do. So it is going to have the Iron Cycle test run, which is the longest roller coaster at sea. So this is an actual roller coaster on there. The PIM Quantum Racers, which are is cars kind of, I don't know if it kind of looks like in the concept art, like they might even be like a little go-kart track. Like it's a free go-kart. And then Groot Galaxy Spin. So it's going to have a spinner ride on it. And that's just all in one. They're calling that Marvel Landing. I think the top of the ship is having 2 or 3 of these landing areas with activities and things to do. But this is pretty crazy. The Iron Cycle, it is kind of like you're riding a motorcycle. It's kind of like Tron cars. Almost. And then the track looks like it's going to kind of go around the top of the boat. So the more I see of this ship, the more excited I am about this, because it's more of again, it's a bigger ship. So it's more like what you see with Carnival or, some of these other ones where they're these huge ships and they're basically floating cities. It's more that size. So Disney is doing a lot more with it.
Yeah. I actually think this is going to be out of Singapore?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Singapore, it's out of Asia. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly 100% what the itineraries are. I don't know if they've fully announced that yet or not.
I would be interested to actually go on this because it is going to be in a place that's far away. That's where I think a cruise really has a benefit. So, when we took our Disney cruise, it was in the Bahamas, which
we wanted to go on the new ship.
Yeah, we wanted to go on the ship. So that was our primary focus, was just to go on the ship. So we didn't really care so much about the destinations. And we've been to Nassau before. So going over there, though, to a place that we've never been, this is where I really think that cruises shine, because you get to experience places for a number of hours. And it's like a sampler platter. You get to sample it, see if you like it. Maybe you want to go back.
I feel like I would go for the ship, though, and not want to get off the ship, because there's so much to do that I almost feel like I would just go because I want to be on that ship, and I'd be like, I don't care where we're going. I'm just going to spend all my time here.
See, I think that I mean, that might create a weird push and pull because I would also want to see what is off of the ship. But you're right, like the ship itself is also a destination. So
Yeah.
it would probably be hard not to be overwhelmed with everything.
Yeah, but it seems like they're doing a really great job with this. And just everything they announce just looks better and better.
They've been doing some really interesting things with it.
Yeah, really excited. All right, so let's get into Disney Plus. So, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Disney Plus launched November 12th, 2019. So, tomorrow, if you're listening to this Monday when the episode comes out, tomorrow is Disney Plus's 5-year anniversary. And so, kind of like looking back at the history and like the genesis of Disney Plus, it actually goes back a few years before that to 2016 when Disney took a stake in BAMTech, which is actually a company that is a spin-off of Major League Baseball. So Major League Baseball, to get into streaming, created this company called BAMTech, and it was basically their kind of technology company to stream Major League Baseball games. And Disney invested in it to create their own streaming product. And they eventually bought it out completely. But the idea was, and the initial thought and goal was, we need to get ESPN as a streaming platform. Because, I mean, we've been talking for a decade now of cord cutting and the death of cable, and people are canceling cable, all that sort of stuff. And ESPN was a huge moneymaker for the company because it was on cable and everybody wanted live sports, everybody wanted ESPN. But as people started dropping their cable packages, ESPN subscribership has gone down. So, you know, people still want live sports. It's still a potential moneymaker. So Disney said, we need to create a streaming service for this to kind of replace what we're losing from cable subscribers. So that was the initial thought behind the investment in BAMTech, behind using that company to have a streaming service. And then in August of 2017, so a year later, Disney announced that they are going to be doing a second streaming service. And this is when the idea of Disney Plus comes around. And then this is also around the time when they agree to buy Fox. So this is kind of when they're going in that bidding war with Comcast to buy Fox. It was in December of that year, so a couple months later, that they finalized the agreement and the deal. It was $71 billion is what the purchase price for Fox and all of the Fox assets were. So this was when like everybody was really excited because, hey, Disney Plus, we're going to have a Disney streaming service. Disney has Fox now, so there's a lot more IP and content in here. And that was kind of the model and the plan, is like, we're going to bundle all of Disney shows, we're going to bundle all the Fox properties, Nat Geo, all that sort of stuff, and have this one like awesome streaming service come out where people can just watch all of it.
Yeah, I feel like at this time, a lot of people, like a lot of companies, thought that streaming was going to be a large moneymaker. And I think that, you know, now time has kind of given us that perspective that, you know, streaming doesn't make a lot of money. People expect it to have a lot on it, and content, especially the way that Disney does their content, is really expensive. So they have to find a way of making it less expensive, but still drive in the viewership.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think people thought back then, it's an interesting point, that streaming made money. Because, I mean, I don't remember, but like Netflix wasn't like they were making a lot of money even in streaming. It took them a while to even become profitable, but it was the perception that streaming made you a technology company, and it was the potential for massive revenue and massive growth. And it was like from the investor community that you have to get in streaming or you're not unlocking value. And it was kind of like, don't worry about whether you make money or not.
I will say that streaming gives you something that you can't really put a price tag on, and it doesn't make you money, but it's relevance, because you got to think of how many movies have like died because they aren't on streaming services or you don't know where to find them. Like there's, you know, like an example of this would just for me be like Liar Liar. I love that movie. It's a great movie. I don't own it anymore. I used to own it, but I have no idea what streaming service it's on, where to find it, if it is on anything. I know that I think it used to be, but right now it's kind of lost, and then you could probably buy it somewhere. But
Yeah, but I actually almost think it's the flip side of it, and not to just disagree with everything you say.
yeah, whatever.
But the flip side of like, I feel like that movie, Liar Liar, if you like it, you know about it already. So if you want to see it again, you're going to seek it out. But I feel like what streaming has done is taken a lot of movies that have maybe flopped in the theaters and given them a second life, or even TV shows. Like how many TV shows now and movies are having a resurrection because they're on Netflix and people are discovering them on Netflix and they move to the top. Like I feel like Suits is a TV show. Not that it was a flop on TV. It ran for a lot of seasons, but it went on Netflix and it was like the #1 show on Netflix for months. And I think they're making another season of it, or they're talking about spin-offs now because it kind of, it's a resurrection too, because
I think
people can find stuff like that.
I was to say Schitt's Creek also is another one where I think because it was a Canadian show, and so because it was on, what is that, the Canadian Broadcasting Channel, and then when it was on, I think it was on Netflix and it moved to Hulu, but like I think the popularity went up so much because it was more readily available in the United States at least, so it got a huge viewership, and now it has like a huge cult following.
But yeah, things like that. I think we're like, yeah, I think it's not necessarily streaming causes movies to not be relevant, because I think the older movies, you're going to seek them out, you're going to find them. But I feel like it does help things that maybe would have died. It's those cult following movies where like they didn't do well in theaters, but it used to be, you got a DVD of them and you rented it and people liked it and word of mouth spread. And now it's kind of, it's with streaming. But kind of going back to the idea of streaming and why Disney jumped into streaming is it was because of, again, investors, Wall Street. They saw streaming as the future. They saw streaming as a way to make the company more valuable. And like it or not, I mean, Disney's a public company. They are driven by making investors happy. And I think some of that too is charting on the highs and lows of Disney Plus. And I think kind of the uneven strategy with Disney Plus, and then obviously there's Hulu as part of the streaming service. And we're not really talking about Hulu here, but Disney owns Hulu as well as kind of another streaming service. And it's kind of like, at the beginning, it was just get subscribers at all costs. We don't care if this makes any money, because it's just about gaining eyeballs, obtaining as many subscribers as possible. And then it became, well, you actually have to make money now with this thing. And now it's like, well, now we need to cut costs and completely retool our strategy, because it's not about gaining subscribers. It's actually about making good content that people want to watch, and they want to stay subscribed. And it's been this roller coaster ride. And again, it's so much driven on what investors want. Whereas like if they would have just looked at it as, how can we make money on this and make it profitable and sustainable, I think they would have had a completely different strategy going into Disney Plus. Because if you were worried about, let's actually make sure this is sustainable, it wouldn't be just get subscribers at all costs. It wouldn't be just spend an unlimited amount of money on content. It would be like, let's do this smartly.
Their strategy, I think, would change. I would be curious to actually interview somebody who was in charge of this to be like, what would you do differently now than you did then?
They would be like, how much time do you have? So let's talk about the launch day. So that was kind of the lead up. That was, again, the announcement, kind of the thought process. That was one of the big reasons Disney talked about it was important to acquire Fox, because it would give them a bigger content library. It gave them access to Hulu as well, which again, I think they thought was a good idea at the time. And then I think they were, somewhat handcuffed by it of now having two streaming services. But Disney Plus launched, 10 million people signed up on day one, which was a huge thing. I remember that being, like all over the news, like a big deal of like 10 million people sign up for the streaming service. Immediately, it's a huge success. It blew away everybody's expectations on what Disney Plus was going to be.
We were some of the original 10 million, weren't we?
Yeah, we were there because like the Mandalorian launched day one, and that was the big thing. Like everybody wanted to see the Mandalorian, everybody wanted to be on Disney Plus. I think the other reason they got so many people signed up is because I remember this, the the initial thing, and this is, again, it seems so long ago that it's 5 years ago, but the initial buzz about this is how incredible of a value Disney was offering, because the original cost of Disney Plus was $6.99 a month. And this was at a time when, Netflix was really the only other streaming service. You had Hulu as well. And, I think Netflix was at the time was probably like $12 or $15. It's like $20 now. So I imagine it was, maybe double this. It definitely wasn't $6.99. Like there wasn't another streaming service with the content, because it basically was the Disney Vault. You got every Disney movie and show, Marvel movie, all that sort of stuff for $6.99. And the thing was just like, this is so cheap. Like Disney priced this very aggressively. I remember too, they were also offering that 3-year discount. So like you could lock into like 3 years, and I think you saved a couple bucks a month or whatever, which turned out to be a good deal because they like kind of quickly raised prices after the fact. But like I think that kind of buzz and having such a low price is what drove so many people to sign up right away. And those subscribers kind of continued by the end of 2020. So within a year, a little over a year, 87 million people had subscribed to Disney Plus. And then as of March of this year, they have 154 million. So it really grew well past like anybody's expectations.
I will say that when they originally priced at $6.99, I know a lot of us were already saying we know that they're gonna raise that price. It's not gonna stay there for very long, but it's the initial low price to try to, entice people to come in and buy into it, and then, I don't want to live without this, so then they're willing to pay, which is essentially what happened.
Yeah, and when they first launched, they only had around 4,000 hours of content. And you look at something like Netflix that today has 42,000 hours of content. So Disney Plus is came out with far less content. So obviously a lower price made sense because there's not the number of hours on there. They're around double that today, so they're still well under Netflix just in terms of overall content. I think Hulu has something like 40,000 hours of content. So if you look at Disney Plus and Hulu together, they are about where Netflix is, maybe a little bit higher. But what I think is interesting is if you look at that $6.99 a month price tag, day one, with 10 million people signed up, that equated to, now again, a lot of people bought discounted packages or whatever, but like let's say everybody eventually got to the $7 a month, they'd be getting about like $840 million a year in revenue. If you look at the current count today, they have 154 million subscribers. If they kept it at the $7, it'd be almost $13 billion. So if you look at it, and we'll get into kind of like the cost and the spending and some of the low points and issues Disney's had with this, I feel like if they would have kept it what it kind of was originally, and what I think it made more sense to be, and we'll kind of get into that, $13 billion a year in revenue, I think would have been more than enough for them. And they could have easily kept it at $7.99. And I think when they started raising prices because they started taking a different strategy path with this is kind of where things went off. I think the positive and the where Disney lucked out, if you will, is they launched this at the end of 2019. Obviously, we all know the pandemic happened beginning of 2020. All of the parks closed. Everybody was inside. So that helped accelerate signups because there's nothing else for people to do. And that also somewhat kept the company afloat because all of the parks were shut down. They weren't making any money that way.
True.
They weren't making any money from theatrical releases because nobody was going to movies. Nobody was doing anything. And so basically most of the other revenue streams of the company dried up, but they had this streaming service. So from a timing perspective of when they launched, it was really lucky, and it kind of kept the company afloat for, a year or two until the parks got back on. Now it's really a drag on the company if you look at it, but those early days, it actually did kind of help in terms of cash flow.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting thought. Like if had they not had the streaming service not started, would Disney still be afloat. I mean, I feel like they would have declared bankruptcy like a lot of companies
They
do.
wouldn't have declared. They would have been afloat. Disney's not declaring bankruptcy.
I don't know.
Yeah, the Disney. No, that's not.
I mean,
that's a
without
little
people
dramatic.
going to the parks and things, it would be really difficult for them to.
It was what 6-7 months though that Disney World was closed. I mean, it's not like they made no money. I mean, I think they would have been okay. I think it was a little drastic that they would have declared bankruptcy.
All right, then they would have been fine.
But it helped. It definitely helped having Disney Plus and having that kind of money coming in. So looking at, some of the shows on Disney Plus. So again, a lot of this stuff is just, the Disney movies. It's basically the Disney Vault if you think about it. Like, it used to have the Disney Vault. They would bring movies out from the vault. Now that's kind of gone because everything's just out there all the time. We talked about Nightmare Before Christmas. You can basically just kind of see any Disney movie anytime you want. But they do have a lot of original content. Some have been good. Some have been not so good. So some of like the better shows. So we talked about The Mandalorian. I think that has been one of the top shows. Some of the other things that have been really good, I feel like, are like Muppets Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, that was really fun.
I think Loki in terms of Marvel. Like I feel like the Marvel shows haven't been too great. Most of them have been okay.
Yeah,
but I feel like I feel like Loki's been really good.
Yeah, the only one I think that wasn't good was what was it, Secret Invasion? That one was.
I mean, you've had Secret Invasion.
That was the only one I didn't watch.
You've had Moon Knight, which I think was kind of okay.
I thought that was cool.
She-Hulk.
I liked that.
Was okay.
I liked the rest of them. I think. I just didn't like. Secret Invasion.
I feel like like again, there haven't been a lot of standouts there. Like I feel like Agatha all along's been really good.
Yeah, Agatha.
WandaVision was the first one, which I think was a good first one to start with. But I feel like Loki's been really good.
Yeah.
I also think like the concert shows, like they did Hamilton.
Yep.
They did Taylor Swift. Like I think things like that are really good, and I think a really good fit for Disney Plus.
Yeah, I have to watch that Taylor Swift one. I actually
the Eras tour. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a day coming up that I am off work, and I think I need to make that Eras day, where I like
get all your friendship bracelets and stuff.
Yeah, and I sit and make friendship bracelets, and I sing at the top of my lungs because nobody's gonna be here. I'll get low-key little like.
You could do the Taylor Swift exercise regimen where you're on the treadmill, like how she trained, and the fast songs you run for, the slow songs you walk for 3 hours.
But you have to sing to them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sing and run. That's what she did to train for 3 hours. That's a good workout.
Maybe I'll do that. Also some of the other, like a couple other things that were really good was the magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom, like some of their documentary, like behind the scenes things like that. And the Imagineering story was another one like that kind of gives you a cool perspective of the inside. There was also
behind the attraction.
Yeah, and the Frozen. I can't remember what the Frozen one was called.
Oh yeah, like the making of Frozen 2.
Yeah, that was a really really good one.
I think those like documentaries are like the sweet spot for Disney Plus.
Well, you think about it, those also are like the things that you would get on like when you get a like a DVD or whatever. Those are like the extended
things.
Yeah,
the things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like those that you would get on there. And then you also don't have on this list The Bad Batch, which huge missed opportunity.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But that's another really
animated.
excellent show. I know Clone Wars started on TV, but now it lives on Disney Plus. And I think Rebels.
But Bad Batch was exclusively Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of other shows too. I mean, they've made a lot of content. And I think these are some of the highlights and some of the ones that, again, we'll kind of talk about later that fit, and they've had some miscues too. And what's interesting is, some of the shows like Willow, that cost $100 million to produce, and they completely pulled it from Disney Plus after 6 months. They also pulled the shows Big Shot, Turner and Hooch, and Mighty Ducks Game Changers. So this was a couple years ago, maybe a year or two now, where like they just went through and just completely removed stuff from the streaming services. Like
they like purged some things.
Yeah, like HBO did this too. And I think, HBO, they've had so many different corporate parents that like they're kind of dysfunctional over there.
Oh yeah.
And you almost kind of expect it from them.
It's Max now.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever it is. But even like DC, like you kind of expect like something's gonna go like wrong over there. Like whenever like the DC movies don't work and they like reboot Superman for the 5th time and HBO's changing its name 5 times, you're like, oh, that's just.
And Henry Cavill both has a job and doesn't have a job at the same time.
You're like, that's just Warner Brothers over there. But like I think it kind of shocked people when Disney was like, we're just pulling these shows from the streaming services. Because I think a lot of people thought, okay, Disney's making these shows. Maybe they have a small audience. Maybe they don't catch on in the way they thought. But like, it'll be here forever. Again, it's a streaming service. That's kind of the idea, is it's going to be here forever. But we've kind of learned that, there are ongoing costs. I mean, there's obviously like costs just to store this stuff on a server, but they got into this whole thing because this was, I think, around like the writer strike too, and some of it is like, I guess they have
residuals.
They have to pay residuals and stuff, and it became this really weird thing, and I feel like it wasn't a great look on Disney's part when they're just like, we're pulling, especially like Willow. Like,
I was gonna say,
we plan to watch that.
We were gonna watch it. We were gonna, because I mean that's a movie, right? And then
it's
a Willow
Lucas
movie.
Film. It's Lucas.
And then I was like, yeah, cool. This is fantasy, and I love that. And I think that it's really hard to do like sci-fi or fantasy well. It hasn't been done well a lot in like on the big screen, or like, so it's something else that I could get into. And yeah, it's not there anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, that one's Lucasfilm, so that's obviously in-house. But like some of these other ones, I'm not sure if maybe, they were outside production companies involved in some way. And like they maybe weren't fully produced by Disney, and that's why, again, there was some financial aspect to keeping them on the streaming services, even though nobody was watching them. But you then start now kind of being like, okay, well, maybe this streaming stuff isn't forever, and then you're kind of like, well, what happens if, to your point earlier, like a movie I like is no longer on a streaming service anywhere, and it's like nobody makes DVDs or Blu-rays anymore. Like, how am I going to see some of this stuff?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where you're getting to, and this kind of leads into the struggles of Disney Plus. So again, pulling shows, obviously a struggle. Things happening there. Willow, again, $100 million just kind of gone. Found a Forbes article from earlier this year that said the cumulative losses for Disney Plus, so over 5 years, is $11.4 billion. So we talked about, it should be bringing in at a $6.99 a month cost, it should be bringing in $13 billion. And now that's it at the, opening day, not the opening day, like the initial day price. Nowadays, Disney Plus with ads costs $9.99 a month. No ads is $15.99 a month. They have a bundle with Hulu. With ads, it's $10.99. Without ads, it's $19.99. Which that bundle with Hulu kind of makes sense when you compare it to Netflix, because again, Disney Plus and Hulu kind of have about the same amount of content as Netflix, because Netflix with ads is actually $6.99 a month. So going back to that kind of initial Disney Plus price, if you don't want ads, it's $15.49 a month, and if you want the premium, you want everything at 4K, it's $22.99 a month. So you would think Disney Plus is at least making, I don't know, $8 to $10 billion a year, but cumulatively it's lost over $11 billion. And they're expecting it to become profitable by the end of this year. So it's still not even profitable. They're still losing money on it.
I feel like Kevin O'Leary would be like absolutely grilling them.
Well, yeah, and again, this is where people started realizing, and I think this is one of the things that kind of caused Chapek to lose his job, because, all of a sudden, I think, one quarter it was like streaming lost $1 billion, $2 billion, and everybody woke up and was like, hold on, like, what are you talking about? Like, we get you got to lose some money to get some subscribers, but now you're just losing $2 billion like a quarter. Yeah. Like, this is completely unsustainable. And then get everything shifted to, no, you need to make money on streaming services, not just get as many subscribers as possible, which is why they started pulling some of these shows.
Well, right. And then you have things that should be making money that they ended up releasing on streaming. So, we were kind of just talking about the pandemic. Well, that kind of put the production studio, particularly Pixar production studio, in this weird spot of they had movies queued up to be released that then couldn't really be released. And so they decided to release Soul in 2020, Luca in 2021, and Turning Red in 2022 directly to Disney Plus. They didn't go to the movie theaters. They went there for free.
Well, yeah, because and you say for free because there was also that time period where they had this premium access model that they thought, hey, we're going to release a movie on Disney Plus, but it's not going to be included in your Disney Plus subscription. You're going to have to pay $30 extra to see it. And they did that with Mulan, and then the live action remake of Mulan. And then Raya and the Last Dragon, Cruella, Black Widow, and Jungle Cruise released both in theaters and on Disney Plus with the premium access. And I remember everybody was like, this is crazy. Why are you making me pay $30 for a movie that's on a subscription service that I already pay for? And then, there was the whole thing of like Black Widow.
There was the whole fight with
Scarlett Johansson because it wasn't released solely in theaters, even though her contract had like some sort of guarantee, I guess, that like it would be a theatrical release. And it was just like, it was this whole crazy thing because again, they kept changing their kind of strategy. But like what you mentioned with Pixar releasing for free, that kind of like undid Pixar. Like they're maybe recovered now, but like
it took a while for them to bounce back.
Yeah, because if you look at the 4 movies released before Disney Plus, and I'm excluding Onward here because that was released like right before the pandemic started, so it obviously didn't have a full box office run. But you had Toy Story 4 made $434 million domestically. Incredibles 2 made $608 million. Coco made $210 million, but it did $814 million worldwide. And then you had Cars 3, which was $152 million. So that was the lowest one. The movies released theatrically after the 3 movies you talked about on Disney Plus was Lightyear, which only did $118 million domestically. Elemental, which did $154 million, but that
is a shame.
Which was a very slow start. It ended up doing just shy of $500 million worldwide, but that was a very slow start that kind of builded. And then, finally, the most recently, Inside Out 2, $652 million domestically, $1.6 billion worldwide. So it took 2 years, basically, after Turning Red to maybe get them back on track. They've had one solid movie with Inside Out 2. Like, we'll see, does the next movie do well? But, like, it changed the consumer's idea of, like, I don't have to go to the theater to see Pixar anymore.
Well, I will say, if we looking back at these numbers, and it might be hard for the listener to kind of keep these numbers in your mind, though, a little bit kind of going toward this kind of a little bit goes towards to the theory that we have, unfortunately, that people go for things that they know. So if we look back at those numbers, so we look back at these numbers, $434 million, that's Toy Story 4, $608 million, that's Incredibles 2. Coco drops down to $210 million because it has no prequel.
But again, it did $800 million worldwide, so it was very successful still.
The only one that kind of is an outlier here, we have 2. We have Cars 3 at $152 million, and that's because the Cars franchise is the Cars franchise. We still have to watch all of them, but
I've never seen any of them. You speak so poorly of them. I've never had any desire.
No, we need to watch them. I bet you any money.
I bet you I love them.
I bet you any money. It's gonna be the Finding Nemo effect. Like, I saw it. I had a bad day. I never watched it again, and I'm gonna see it again, and I'm gonna be like, oh my goodness, this is incredible.
Yeah, I like the characters.
Because I like Owen Wilson.
Yeah, I like Lightning McQueen. I like Mater. I like Radiator Springs Racers. Like, I like the environment. I like the idea of it. You've spoken so poorly. Like, you love Disney movies. You love animated movies.
I do.
And you've never said a good thing about Cars. And I'm like, I guess I don't need to watch this movie.
I know, we got to watch them. But then, all right, going back to the point. So Lightyear, surprisingly, although I think that everyone just knew it was not a flop. It was $118 million. And then Elemental, again, $154 million. And then it shoots back up for Inside Out 2 at $652 million. So I kind of feel like part of that was them trying different things. And like, it is not for, like, looking at Elemental, it did well worldwide, but that number is pitiful, especially for considering how great of a movie
But
it was.
Elemental really chugged along. Like the word of mouth helped it do well. But you got to look back. I mean, original Pixar, they came out with original movies. You went to go see. It was basically like, hey, Pixar has a new movie coming out. You're gonna go see it. And it was this whole thing of like, okay, why do I have to go to a movie theater now when I can just see these movies for free? I'm already paying for the subscription service. And so, it hurt Pixar. Again, we'll see. Inside Out 2, did that just do well because it was a sequel? Or are people kind of getting used to going back to the theaters to see Pixar again? So you had the issues there. You had the issues with Premier Access. Again, kind of going back to the costs here and the losses. So, some of the reasons why they've lost so much money on this is because they're spending so much on content, because they got this idea of, hey, the Mandalorian's doing well. People like the original content. We're gaining so many subscribers. Let's just keep pouring more and more money into this. It's just going to work. It's going to work. They allegedly spent, again, this is going back to the Forbes article, $500 million on just Moon Knight, Secret Invasion, and Loki Season 2. And really only one of those was very good. Secret Invasion was pretty widely seen as not great. Moon Knight, I think, was kind of mixed.
Cool.
Yeah, it was mixed.
It was really cool.
But I think Loki Season 2 is the best one there. They announced in 2022 they were going to spend $33 billion on content. So they're spending a ton of money here on content. And I think this is one of the reasons why you see the parks are so expensive today. Should go back, and I should have done this. I just kind of thought about this now, of like tracking what did the parks cost in terms of ticket price and food and all that sort of stuff in 2018 versus today. Now, I do know we had Magical Express back then. We had free fast passes back then. We had a lot of stuff that was free that you have to pay for now. But I think one of the huge reasons of this, and I think you can kind of point the finger directly at Disney Plus, because you have one part of the company that's lost in 5 years $11 billion. So to your point of like Disney declaring bankruptcy, and I was like, hey, Disney's never going to do that. If you didn't have the parks, you don't have a sustainable company losing $11 billion over 5 years. So if you look at Disney's financial statements, so for the year, their fiscal year ended 2023, so last year.
That's what I do all the time. I just sit.
You sit and read financial reports.
And I read financial reports.
Well,
it's actually my favorite pastime.
Well, that's what I do, because I'm trying to connect the dots here between Disney Plus losses and why the parks are so expensive.
Joe actually has a cork board with pins and string.
Exactly.
It's just all around.
Hey, as my good friend Hamilton would say, I don't know, it wasn't Hamilton. As they say in Hamilton, follow the money and see where it goes.
Okay.
So Hamilton didn't say that though, but it was in there.
They said it about Hamilton.
Yeah. So for 2023, the Parks and Experiences division of Disney accounted for 70% of the overall operating income of the entire company. So just theme parks and experiences was 70%. So that means streaming, direct-to-consumer, theatrical, sports, all of that sort of stuff only accounted for 30%. So I think that is why you see the theme parks, everything costs more, because that is what is making all of the money and funneling all of these losses. So like we talked about a little bit ago, how the timing was great to have Disney Plus because it kept money coming in the door while the theme parks were closed. And again, that was a time when they weren't spending a lot of money on content, because it was basically, it's just all of the old back catalog at Disney, plus we have The Mandalorian. That was really the only thing they had on there. So they weren't spending a lot of money. It was a lot of money coming in. Whereas nowadays, it's losing them billions of dollars a year. And the only way they can afford that is if the theme parks are making billions of dollars a year. So
what's going to happen when Epic Universe opens?
I mean, that's the thing. That is, and again, it's kind of like, hey, Disney Plus, I feel like overall, if you ask me right now, it is more a negative to the company than a positive, because it has taken a lot of financial resources from the company. Again, they're basically trying to get as much money out of the parks as possible without investing more money into it, charging for things that were free, trying to, increase prices of everything. And you're starting to see rides are aging. There's downtime issues, but like, it's not like they have a ton of money when they have this, financial drag on the company. But you're right. Like, what happens now when Epic Universe comes out? If bookings become light in the theme parks, you're going to have to cut back on that investment in the parks more. And then you really need Disney Plus to start making, like, it's this weird thing. They're in a very precarious position right now because of having to fund streaming.
Yeah, I'm worried that they would cut functionality in order to save money in various areas. I mean, they've already done this in parts of their company. So National Geographic had an app, and I subscribed to the app because I, every now and again, when I'm sitting there thinking at night, what should I do? What should I read? I would like pull up one of their articles and find something and read it. Well, one day I did that and it was completely gone. And they said that like they cut the app. When you clicked on it, it said they cut the app and they put it back on the website and they refunded us like whatever.
Oh, for the
for
app.
whatever the rest of the year was. But I was just like, this seems so weird, like that they would cut that functionality
and that's why I
put
think,
it all back online.
a lot of the stuff, after D23 that they announced, I'm like, I'm not convinced all of this stuff happens.
Yeah.
What they announced for the parks and things, because Disney's done this before where they announce a bunch of stuff and then the economy turns, or, bookings are light, or other areas of the company need money and they go, hey, we got to cut budgets here. We got to pull back, and stuff's not happening in the parks. And I think, that could potentially happen if they start attendance dips and they go, why put all this money in the parks if attendance is dipping? We need to do more with less. I mean, hopefully streaming kind of turns around. But I think the other issue too is like it's taking focus away from all these other areas of the company. Again, like when you're focused so much on how do you make streaming profitable, and you keep changing on, we're going to release stuff for free on streaming, we're going to try charging extra for it. Nope, now it's all about quality over quantity and theatrical releases.
Yeah, it's kind of like how you fixate on something that's wrong, and sometimes you do this in life sometimes where you can get caught up in only looking at the negatives and only looking at the thing that is like causing you the most pain and stress, because the things that aren't causing you pain and stress, they're not standing out to you. So like a lot of your effort and your energy is going there instead of at like kind of taking a step back and looking at those things that are working.
Yeah, it's like the 80-20 rule where like 80% of your time is spent on like like in business, like 20% of your customers. Like you're spending way more time on a small subset of customers or tasks or something, because it's like it takes your focus away from other stuff when it's disproportional for what you're doing. And so I think it's absorbing a lot of attention. So I think looking at all of this, and again looking at how I think it has impacted the company negatively, kind of like looking back on like, okay, what should Disney have done with Disney Plus? And I think they can still kind of course correct overall, but like I think how Disney should have looked at this, and I think initially how they kind of did was, it's the vault. It's the Disney vault, DVDs, Blu-rays, those sales were kind of already dipping. I mean, now basically like, I think Disney's now like outsourced their Blu-rays or something. Like, I don't even know, like nobody even really like prints or buys like movies. I don't even think Best Buy sells them. Like it's weird like how you can't buy physical media anymore. But looking at Disney's,
nobody wants to jam pack their bookshelves with cases. Well, yeah,
and with streaming, what you don't really
get a digital
need it.
download, exactly. If anything.
So going back to more annual reports here. So I look back at Disney's 2018 annual report because I was thinking, okay, if Disney just tried to replace their Blu-ray sales, like what were they doing in Blu-ray sales? So the 2018 annual report, the Disney Home Entertainment division, which would have been like the media sales, that sort of stuff, had $1,750,000,000 in revenue. So $1.7 billion in revenue. The year before, it was just shy of $1.8 billion. So that's what they were doing in terms of Blu-ray sales revenue. If Disney would have kept the $6.99 a month price tag, they would have only needed 21 million subscribers to get the same amount of revenue per year of what they were doing in Blu-ray sales. And I think that's how they should have looked at it. Basically, continue to make movies, release them in theaters, and instead of selling DVDs or Blu-rays of them, you still could have. Some people might want to buy them because, again, maybe they're worried streaming goes away, they pull the movie or whatever, so you still might have some sales. But then put them on Disney Plus, because at that point, there is no cost to the company for that content, because they're making that content already for the theaters. They're recouping the money through ticket sales, and then they get additional money from it going on Disney Plus. And I guarantee you, if they would have kept the price at $7, they could have even probably upped it by now to $8 or $9. They would have more than 21 million people. They have 150 million subscribers now. I'm sure they probably could have gotten 40 or 50 million. And sure, it's not as flashy as Netflix, but if you have 50 million people paying you $7 or $8 a month and you're getting, double what you used to get in Blu-ray sales, that's a pretty good business model, and it's profitable. That's the thing. It's a profitable business model.
Right, and then you can put your Disney shows on there, like ones that were made for the Disney Channel. So then it becomes, okay, look, if you want the Disney Vault Plus, we can put Bluey on there, and you can watch it with your young kids. I mean, it doesn't have to be that they're creating new content that they weren't already making for television.
Yeah, and I think they could have created some original content. Like, again, hey, The Mandalorian works. You talked about The Bad Batch. I'm sure that's a more inexpensive thing to do. But like the documentaries, like I think the documentaries are basically like reality TV. I mean, in the way that they're non-scripted, I guess, non-scripted TV, which is much cheaper to produce. And again, like
there's no big like production budget,
right.
No explosions, no nothing. You're not hiring actors, big name actors.
Right, exactly. And there's not CGI, all that sort of stuff. And it becomes, I think, it's like hardcore Disney fans would want. It's like they want behind the scenes, and it kind of goes back to like what Walt did with television, where he did like The Wonderful World of Disney, and basically the TV shows he produced for ABC and all the channels were basically just promos for the parks of like, look at what we're building, look at what we're working on, come see it in the parks. And then Disney Plus would almost then act as a feeder system to get people into the parks, because again, it's now you get to see behind the scenes of your favorite attraction, of your favorite Imagineers, of Animal Kingdom, how they do that. And it's a cheap thing to produce because those people are kind of just going about their day at Animal Kingdom and you're filming it. And then it gets people excited to go to the parks again. So I think things like that, I think like you said, the Disney Channel, like they kind of made, Disney Channel movies are a little bit more low budget, a little bit, like less in terms of like CGI, those type of costs. But like The Descendants, those are decent movies. And like they were Disney Channel movies, put them on Disney Plus, make them on Disney Plus. Like I think that is what they should have looked at. And I think that's what they should have focused on versus $500 million Marvel properties.
Yeah, I think that's kind of going back to, I think, what you said already, but it's sort of where they started. Like they had The Mandalorian was like their banner show, which I'm sure cost them a lot of money. But at the same time, it's like once The Mandalorian was ending, they got like really, I feel like I'm sure they didn't think of it just then, but they were like, oh, what are we going to do to maintain subscribers so they don't drop off after The Mandalorian? And so they panicked and like they tried to pump out all this other content. And some of it was, like you were saying, like costing, large amounts of money. And it maybe wasn't something that people either wanted or something that they put a lot of thought into, and so it wasn't great, and they sort of almost destroyed their credibility.
Well, that's the thing, like
in a way.
They are now on this kind of hamster wheel where in order to justify the ever increasing cost per month of Disney Plus, they have to have new content all the time, and they have to have theatrical quality, movie quality content, so these TV shows have budgets of $150 million. And so basically they all have to be successful because, to your point, if you spent less on a Star Wars show, like let's say they spent less money on the Acolyte or the Mandalorian or something, people are going to go, oh, the CGI doesn't look good. It looks cheap. It's not great. Disney's not, putting a lot of quality out. What's the point of paying for this? Or again, there's been no new shows out in a while. Why am I paying this? So it's almost, that's why, to my point, it's like they should have never worried about increasing the cost. Like, don't worry about, and I think they can, they can stop making all of these very expensive original shows, and they can switch to kind of focus on, it's just going to be the vault. It's just going to be the place you can see the movies that came out in theaters. It's going to be kind of like a Disney super fan streaming service. And let's not increase the price, because the price where it is, maybe you could even lower it. It's like, we don't need that many people to do it. Now, again, they're at a point they have to recoup $11 billion, which is going to take them a long time to do. But like, if they would have done this from the beginning, it would have been immediately profitable. They would not have lost $11 billion. They would not have needed the theme parks to kind of basically bail them out in terms of things. And I think fans would have liked it. And I think you still would have had a lot of people subscribe to it. They didn't need to be Netflix. They didn't need to be Hulu. They don't need to be HBO. Like, they could have had like a very well-loved, I feel like, streaming service here that I just feel like they made a lot of missteps along the way.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be hard for them to peel back, because I think people are going to definitely complain. I think that kind of what you said, if they are going to plan on peeling back and making it more like the vault, that they almost need to call it out. I don't know that they're going to be smart enough to kind of say it in that way, because I think that they really need to make it sound like, look, we're going to peel back on this, but we're also going to give you, it's still going to be the vault, and we're going to give you a discount.
Yeah. That all being said, very excited for Daredevil Born Again. So I'm very glad that Daredevil's getting a second life on TV here. But hey, if they would have kept it at Netflix, I would have been happy with that too. Like, it doesn't need to be on Disney Plus. They could have produced it for Netflix still, and I would have been very happy there.
Hang on. This is actually, I thought about this at the top of the show and I forgot it until just now. This is where I think that they also kind of made the mistake, is just making, like, they should just be selling off some of their content to other streaming services. That way they don't have to even manage it. And
no, somebody else pays for it.
Yeah.
That's the key. Not that they don't have to manage it, that they know it's paid for.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
They know where the budget is. Yep.
They are still making money. I mean, do what they do. They license things like crazy all the time. Like, they license clothing, like their characters all over the place. There's so many different companies
that
get
Disney does
Disney
well.
licensing.
They invent IP and then they license it.
Right.
That's what they do extremely well. Create IP and license it. That then gets you excited to buy the merch, gets you excited to come in the parks. Yeah. They don't necessarily distribute it.
So yeah, I mean, this never really needed to exist in the first place. If they just said, okay, cool, we'll sell you our vault, but you got to pay us this much money.
No, I think I think having the vault on streaming, but I think a lot of the original shows, they had deals with Netflix. I think they could have just sold some of that stuff to other streaming networks and kept Disney, again, this very specific thing that, again, it wouldn't be 200 million people are signed up for it. It's maybe 50 or 60 million. But that's sometimes all you need. Like, there's sometimes value in a very specific, I imagine people would stay subscribed longer. Like, you have diehard fans that you're going to have that are going to really enjoy this content. And then if you want your other stuff, then you go to Hulu. Then you go to Netflix. Like, there's other places you can get your Disney content that you didn't have to put it all on one streaming service here.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's been a crazy 5 years. Again, a lot has happened. A lot has changed on Disney Plus in 5 years. So love to hear from our listeners. Like, what's your favorite show? Do you have Disney Plus? What's been your favorite show, your least favorite show? How do you think it's impacted the company? We'd love to hear from you. Let us know on our Instagram. We're at Enchanted Ears Podcast. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just comment below. But that wraps up the show for this week. I want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It really helps, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.